How you doing, everybody? Welcome back to Before I Forget. This is my video channel inspired by my Instagram channel, 1985 Road Dog. I appreciate everybody tuning in and following my channel and my Instagram, etc., etc. My last video that I did recently was about the documentary Nothing But a Good Time, The History of Hair Metal. And I've heard from some people since that video was put up and posted about hair. How many of those bands had wigs and fake hair? I mean, it's crazy to think about, but like they took themselves so seriously, a lot of those bands. It's like, appearance was everything. And if you didn't have good hair, you got a wig, which is just insane when you think about it today. You look at bands that had great vocalists or band members that didn't have great hair. I mean, you look at Ronnie Dio. He didn't have great hair, but he had the voice. It didn't matter about his hair. Klaus, what's his name? Klaus Meine from the, is that the name of the Scorpions lead singer? Didn't have great hair. Didn't matter because he had the pipes, man. He could sing. And, Dio came out of Rainbow and, he was around before hair metal. So was the Scorpions were around way before hair metal. So they didn't need wigs. They didn't care. It didn't matter. They had their following. You look at Judas Priest. Rob Halford had short hair a lot of the time, which was part of his whole, Rob Halford's a gay man, and that scene and that whole Leatherman thing. There was, no one had really long hair. They had short hair, so that's where he came from. But he never had hair issues. I have a list here I'm looking at of the people that have wigs in the hair metal scene. It's insane. I mean, look at Kevin DuBrow, rest in peace. Kevin DuBrow, in the beginning of Quiet Riot, he didn't have good hair. But did it matter? I mean, they had a huge hit record, huge single with Come On Feel the Noise. He had terrible hair. Didn't matter. People loved the band. They loved the song. They went to the concerts. No one was going, oh, he has terrible hair. I guess his own insecurity of seeing himself in magazines, tons of pictures in magazines with his hair, he ended up getting a wig. And it was, you knew, there was no hiding it. It's like one day Kevin DuBrow's half bald and the next day he's got a full wig, a full head of hair, crazy thick hair. So it's just so, it was just such a part of that world. You had to look good. Again, MTV had a big part of it, but you had to look good. If you've been following me, I worked for LA Guns as a road manager on their first tour. From the first time I ever met Tracy Guns, he did not have good hair. Tracy actually had, I don't know what he had so many different things, whether it was, extensions or pieces or whatever. And he did an ad for a girl in Hollywood that did, worked on your hair. He did an ad for this girl, probably so he could get free treatments or whatever. But when I first started working for LA Guns, Tracy, I remember him sitting on the tour bus with crazy glue and gluing pieces of hair in his head. Tracy did not have good hair from the beginning. And he didn't hide it. If you saw him gluing stuff in his hair, he's like, yeah, I got bad hair. He didn't care, which was a good attitude to have. Tracy, there was a period when Phil Lewis wore a crazy wig. So LA Guns was about to open for AC/DC. And I think there was like a week off between our last club dates and the beginning of the AC/DC tour, because it was the start of the AC/DC tour. So there was a lot of pre-production they were doing at the arena, and it was a lot of setup before this tour started. And LA Guns kind of just, we had maybe a week, 5 days off or something. So Phil and Tracy both go away. They go back to Hollywood or wherever they went. And the first show of the AC/DC tour, Phil shows up with a wig that looked like Daniel Boone's coonskin cap. I mean, it was so big and so high and so thick. There was no question that he had gotten a wig. He didn't tell anybody he was doing this either. He walked into the dressing room, and the manager of the band, Alan Jones, who brought Phil over from England to join LA Guns. Alan was the guy that brought Phil over to join the band. And when Phil walked in with this Daniel Boone looking thing on his head, everybody was like, what the hell? Everyone was in shock. It was so obvious. And it was big and thick, and it was like Daniel Boone's coonskin cap. That's all I could think of when I think of that hair. And he used to wear this top hat on top of it, so it was like, 10 feet in the air. It was, and at the same time, Tracy comes in. Tracy's hair was about here, and he comes in with extensions almost down to his waist. At the same time, we're like, oh my God. It's like no one's hair grows in a week that fast, It was so obvious. But that was the times that everyone had to compete. A guy like Jack Russell from Great White always had a wig, and he didn't care if people knew, and it was common knowledge. He had a syrup on his head, they called it, or a rug or whatever. Nothing but the history of hair metal is like the history of wig metal, really. Bret Michaels, everybody knows. I mean, when I first knew Bret or met Bret, his hair was thin. And then he started wearing the whole bandana thing with the, I don't think he's denied it either. He's admitted that he has extensions, but I mean, it's a wig. Bret's got the wig with the bandana. And, if you don't have hair, the wig, I don't know, that was like not the way to go for me. The way I saw it, not for me, I've got hair, But anyway, Bret kept his the same. It kind of like, I don't think it wasn't a shock when Bret Michaels got his wig, because it was like, it didn't look that crazy from his original hair, but if you knew him, you knew. J.J. French from Twisted Sister. JJ now has shaved his head bald, which it looks great. I mean, he's like, I don't have hair. I ain't wearing a wig anymore. And he shaved his head because it's a lot of work to get the wig, maintain the wig, tighten the wig. You have to go to treatments. It's a lot of work. So he just shaved his head. But I remember JJ in the early Twisted Sister days in the clubs, he didn't have terrible hair. He had thin hair, and it didn't look terrible. But one day you go see Twisted Sister, I don't know, at Hammerheads or one of the clubs, and he's got this big head of hair. It's like, obvious he got a wig. And he kept that wig for a long time, and now he shaved his head, and he looks great. You look great, JJ. Who else is on my list? David Lee Roth. David Lee Roth never wore a wig in the Van Halen days until he went solo. And then all of a sudden he's got this crazy giant thick head of hair. It's like, it was obvious he got a wig. Vinnie Vincent, we all know, he never had good hair from the earliest days before he was in Kiss or any of that stuff. So Vinnie Vincent went to the extreme. Not only did he have wigs, he had crazy, spiky, giant pink wigs and stuff. So, who else is on my list here? I see Ace Frehley now has a wig. His wig looks like Richie Rano's wig. Richie Rano from Stars has a wig now. When I first met Richie, he had very, didn't have good hair, very thin. And then one day he got a wig and this thick head of hair. And his wig looks like, Ace Frehley's wig looks like the Richie Rano wig. It's like the same wig. But I guess, this comes into the whole thing of, old rock stars, well, now old rock stars. I mean, Ace, I guess Ace felt he needed a wig, it's like, but all those young bands I mentioned earlier, the LA Guns guys, Brett Michaels, Kevin DuBrow, did they need wigs? Once you're in Circus magazine for weeks and weeks and months with no wig, and then all of a sudden you've got a wig, it's like, what a bad choice. Put a hat on. Do the choir boys. Spike from the choir boys never had good hair after a while, and he always wore the bandana over his head, a la Little Steven Van Zandt. They just wore the bandana. You know that they don't have hair, but it's like better than a wig. But the Kevin DuBrow, that wig was like, he went from bald to like, insane hair. So then I have a list of the people with the best hair. Back then, Nikki Sixx and Tommy Lee had great hair. I don't know what they've got going on now, Nikki, I don't know. But back then, in the 80s, Shout at the Devil and Theater of Pain days, Nikki didn't have a wig. None of those guys wore wigs in Motley Crue. They had great hair, especially Nikki and Tommy. They had great hair. Kelly Nichols always had great hair from the beginning days of when he was a roadie. Kelly had great hair. Steve Riley had great hair. Robin Crosby had great hair. Sebastian Bach had great hair. Mike Monroe, Tom Kiefer, Eddie Van Halen in the earliest days, Bon Jovi, David Coverdale. All those guys had great hair. I don't know if Coverdale ever got a wig. I don't think he did. Steven Tyler looked cool and had great hair in the 70s. It's questionable now. He might have some things going on in there, some pieces. I don't know. But when you're a rock star, I guess you've got to have the image. But, the wig thing is like, the history of hair metal should be called the history of wig metal, because most of those bands wore wigs, really. But again, like I mentioned earlier, the Scorpions and those guys didn't wear wigs. Dio, no wigs. It's like, they didn't need the wigs. They had their music and they had their pipes, their voice. But the 80s were a weird time. It was all about image, how you looked. If you didn't have good hair, teased out to here, you weren't cool. But those bands took themselves way too seriously, all those glam and hair bands. It was, they took themselves way too seriously. That's why I got to say, Tracy Guns, he didn't care if people saw him gluing with crazy glue, pieces of hair in it. I'm like, how is that crazy glue on your scalp? What the hell's going on there? It was just like, it was crazy, but he didn't care. He was like, whatever, But some people went to lengths to hide their wig wearing thing. The keyboard player in Bon Jovi, I think, had a wig, David Bryan. He had the poodle perm kind of vibe, and all of a sudden one day his hair's down to here and it's kind of straight. But that was the thing. You had money, and you listened to managers and publicists and clothes designers, whatever. You should get a wig. It's like, props to those guys that didn't get wigs. Yeah, man, I had to just jump on with this because people were asking me about the who had a wig, and I'm like, a lot of people had wigs in the 80s, but yeah, that's my take on wig metal. So thanks for tuning in, and let me know what you think about this in the comments. And there's no reason to wear a wig anymore, man. Wear a hat. Wear a bandana if you need to, or just shave your head bald like JJ French. JJ looks great. It's the way to go, man. Who else is bald real quick? Satriani? Is Satriani bald now? I don't know. I can't remember. Anyway, wig metal. Keep rocking, and thanks for tuning in. And don't forget, my book is on sale. Tales from the Gutter and Other Rock and Roll Shenanigans is on Amazon globally, hardcover, softcover, and Kindle. Check out my Instagram, 1985 Road Dog, and we'll speak to you soon. Ciao.